So today I was actually driving near my house and I happened to drive past an old McDonald's that I used to go to when I was a kid. And it was like a guttural punch to my chest because it's old, it's run down, it's actually not even in business anymore. You know, the sign isn't lit up anymore, it's an old hollow shell of it used to be. And it made me sad because it makes me think about my childhood. And I was like, oh, I spent so many days in there with my mom. We used to go get lunch, we used to go get dinner and have good like childhood times and go in the play place. And now it's just nothing. It's gone. I'll never be able to go back there. And now granted, it's a McDonald's, so does anybody even really want to go back there? But it's about the childhood memories that you associate with it. Doesn't really matter what the place is. And now put that in contrast with the gameplay that you're watching right now. If you load into Scrapyard, it's exactly how you left it in 2010. Still there. My brain knows where the spawns are and my hands know exactly where those spawn snipes are. I know exactly which corner people like to hide in. It's a strange, heavy feeling, like realizing that a digital space from a 15-year-old game somehow weirdly feels more familiar to my brain than the street I actually grew up on. And you know, it makes me think, like, what if our brains can't even distinguish between what's real and what's digital in the first place? If Rust from Modern Warfare 2 is more special to you than your childhood home, maybe your brain just can't tell the difference. You know, back then during Black Ops 1, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops 2, we didn't just play games on those maps. We didn't just run TDM or domination. We occupied the maps. You know, we have more neural pathways dedicated to the layout of Scrapyard than we do to the actual office buildings that we work in every single day for the last 5 years. You know, call it nostalgia all you want. It actually might just be more of a form of digital phantom limb syndrome. I think we're reaching for a place that exists purely in our heads psychologically, but the physical servers they're never really going to be the same they were. You know, this reminds me of that sociological concept called the third place. I'm sure you've heard of it, but if you haven't, your first place is your home. Your second is your work or your school or something like that. And then your third place is where you go to just be with your friends, socialize, or relax. And for us back in 2009, 2010, so on and so forth, I think these maps were actually our third place. I think Black Ops 1 Summit was my equivalent of a coffee shop. I think BO2 Carrier, that might have been the park. Because, you know, if you look around in like the world right now in 2026, those third places are few and far between. A lot of them have been systematically erased. I mean, everywhere you go, everything costs $20 just to sit down. You want to hang out with your friends? You better have $200 ready and locked and loaded for the day. So yeah, we moved to video games for comfort. You know, we didn't come to Highrise or Terminal just to play a tactical shooter or really just get our aim better. We came to hang out. You know, this was our version of standing on the corner. And what's kind of trippy and a little bit scary is the fact that we're like the pioneers of the lonely revolution. You know, we were the first generation to accept a digital simulation of a neighborhood because the physical one was becoming either too expensive, too sterile, or just in general less interesting or less fruitful. You know, for better or for worse, we spent a lot of time in our childhood not being outside, but being within these maps. Whether that was a good thing is totally subjective, but for me, like, I have a lot of good memories baked into Highrise. You know, if you're like me, you probably just thought you were gaming back then, but we were actually participating in one of the largest migrations in human history. You know, moving the social lives over to, I guess, like the digital landscape. But this is really where it becomes an absolute gut punch. You know, every year that goes by, these maps move further and further away. I mean, look at me. Like, I've moved forward. I've got a house now. I've got a job. I've got a career. I've got responsibilities. I got people that count on me. I'm doing exactly what I was supposed to do. But moving forward feels like I'm just moving further and further away from something that has an absolute magnet to my heart. You know, you're supposed to move on. You're supposed to expand your life. But having to trim away the things that are so special to you, but you also can't explain to the average person, it just hurts. It just sucks. How do you explain to Sue in accounting that Rust is an amazing map that you hung out with your friends in? How do you explain the absolute electricity of the YouTube community? How do you explain the absolute community that was there between different gaming clans, different maps, midnight releases? You just can't. It just doesn't exist. And if you want to behave quote unquote normally, you're gonna have to get with that. You're gonna have to let go of that piece of yourself. Or at least that's how it seems. You know, truthfully, I don't think I'm ever gonna forget about these maps, but There's a real social pressure to just the taboo around not being allowed to enjoy those things. And it just truly burns my heart to realize like I'm slowly drifting further and further and further out to sea, where all of a sudden I'm going to look back at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and think, wow, that was 2 decades ago. Wow. I was begging to get in 10th Prestige lobbies and learning how to quickscope on Rust actually almost 2 decades ago. And that's crazy because it's not only a time ago, it is a location. I picture Rust in my head when I'm talking about it. It's like our version of summer camp. Instead of going to the wilderness or going to a campsite, we went to Rust. And you know, sure, we're successful now, sure, whatever. But success in the real world often requires us to kill that part of us that was free enough to spend 6 hours in a lobby and just live. And every time I check my bank account or if I, pay my rent or what have you, I'm reminded that I've successfully traded my home in the lobby for a house in real life or responsibilities in real life. I saw a really, really insightful comment on one of my most recent videos, and it said, not growing up hurts a lot more than growing up. And I agree. But man, I miss these maps. I truly do. It feels like we've gained the life we've always wanted in the real world, but we lost the frequency that we like to operate at. We're standing in a beautiful kitchen, but we're still listening for the lobby countdown timer in our heads. And I could try to give credit here and say modern gaming does an okay job of trying to simulate this feeling by bringing back old maps, but they really can't. It's just something you can't do. It's like Uncanny Valley. They give us remasters and legacy content and remastered guns, but it looks like looking at a wax museum version of your passed away relatives. They've optimized the neighborhood out of the experience. They just selected it out. They replaced the hanging out with like feedback loops and engagement loops and systems. And, they don't really care if you feel at home. They just want you to feel that little hit of nostalgia, and then they're just going to treat you like any old customer. I feel like this is like the Disneyification of all of our childhood memories in all of those locations. Big corporations realize that maybe our homesickness is actually a commodity to them. So they're going to go ahead and repackage up and give us old maps and try to give it back to us and sell it back to us. And honestly, if you're anything like me, you'll buy it anyway because you just want that feeling. You want to satisfy that part of you that misses that. I remember when Modern Warfare 3 came out a few years ago. The newer Modern Warfare 3, by the way, not the old one. And it had all the OG Modern Warfare 2 maps remastered. And I had so much fun on them. Like, it was such a good gaming launch. But I slowly started to realize, I'm like, ooh, this is like driving your new car through an old neighborhood and you just feel like you're on somebody else's land. It's so weird because the lobbies were more full than ever, more Call of Duty players than ever, but I just felt empty. It just didn't feel right. They could try and give us the old map, but they can't make my friend not have bills to pay. They can't make me have more free time to play with them. And they can't give us the version of the internet and YouTube before it came a shopping mall. It's like selling somebody a house, but it has no semblance of being a home. And the main factor is if you're watching this and you're feeling that same ache that I do for these old maps, whether it's the Highrise, the Rust, the Summit, the Nuketown, don't feel like you're stuck. You're just a traveler checking in on where you ended up coming from. We're not nostalgic for a game per se. We're just mourning the last time in human history that the internet actually felt like a playground instead of, like a boarding room. And I guess overall, the truth is these maps don't feel like a home because of the graphics or because of how good you did in the game. They feel like home because they were the last place that we were allowed to be unproductive kids. And life isn't about being kids. It's about holding on to that old version of yourself, realizing there's a ton of wisdom in being a kid, and then going based on that and realizing you got to hold on to that spark. So having these conversations, it's actually worth it, and it's actually very good for you. It's a big part of why I started making these videos again. As much as it's like, oh, I don't want to drop a video with a nuke, I don't really care. I don't care about new Call of Duty's new gameplay. There's a piece of me, like my inner child, that needs healing, and I think that I need to do that through these conversations. And I'm hoping that I can bring you guys some value and some entertainment while I do it. So yeah, go out there, live your life, protect your peace, enjoy the house that you worked so hard for, but never apologize for being homesick for a world that was built on a connection. Whether it's digital or physical, if you felt that connection, it's real. Nobody can take that away from you. And you know, while the sun has fully set on that era, that doesn't mean we can't shed any light on it. You know, we were there to see it, and we can continue to talk about it. Oh, and also one more thing before I go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you so much for all the support on the channel lately. I want to let you know I actually just opened the Discord if you guys wanted to join it and talk to me. I'll be posted up in there having conversations. We can toss around video ideas, maybe play some video games together. It's going to be linked right in the description. So thank you for all the support and have a great day.